So imagine you're a fiddler, okay? You play the fiddle, and your only goal in life is to be the best fiddler there ever was. And you have spent years of your life devoted to this craft. You've learned every new piece of information you can possibly learn, every book on the subject, every teacher you could get in touch with, every new thing that comes out online. You've seen every how-to YouTube video on how to play the fiddle. You have studied every bit of information on the fiddle that you can find. And you've done this for years. But you've come to a point where it doesn't seem to matter how much new stuff you learn, you seem to kind of be stuck. And you can't get past a certain point. So one day, you think to yourself, you know what? I'm going to go to the devil himself and ask him for the secret to being the best fiddle player there ever was. Because surely he has the answer for me. So you go down to Georgia and you meet up with the devil. And you ask him, you say, can I please have the secret that I need in order to become the best fiddler there ever was? And he says, yes, I will give you the secret to being the best fiddler. And then he disappears in a puff of smoke. And you sit there and you start getting excited. You're like, oh my God, he's going to bring back this epic sacred text on all the secrets of how to be the best fiddler. But instead of that happening, in front of you, the ground starts to crack open and it starts to split until the whole ground just turns into this like black hole vortex, okay? And it sucks everything on the entire planet into the hole, except for you and your fiddle. So all the people, everything, every book, every computer, every smartphone, every piece of paper, everything gets sucked into the vortex except you and your fiddle. And then it closes up. And that's it. And you think to yourself, well, your first thought is, well, that's kind of sad. The whole world's over. But your second thought is, that jackass, that trickster, he tricked me. He said he would give me the secret. But instead, he took everything away. But you being the stubborn fiddler that you are, you insist to yourself that you must become the best fiddler. But you start to wonder, well, I can't improve if I don't have new knowledge. I can't go to a library and get a book. I can't meet up with a teacher. I can't look online for answers. I can't improve if I don't have the knowledge. So what starts to happen is you begin to look within yourself for the answers. And so instead of looking for rules on music theory or, the next new thing on modes or whatever, you begin to develop your own theories on music theory and your own ideas and your own thoughts on how music should work. And you begin to write your own songs, and it's all about what you want out of it. And you start to think really, really hard on every memory you've ever had of someone playing the fiddle. Maybe one time when you were like 7 years old, you watched some master fiddler play his fiddle incredibly well. And just now, you never thought about it before, but just now you're beginning to remember the way he held his bow was a little bit different than you've learned. And so you try that out, and lo and behold, it makes you better. And any song you ever want to hear, you can't just, open up Spotify and press play. You have to figure it out in your head and then play it on your fiddle. And so you learn to transcribe all of these songs that you've known onto the fiddle. And in doing so, you become a master at I don't know, playing from memory or playing out of your head or whatever. And so through all of these new connections that you are making as this lonesome fiddler in the middle of a desolate world, you become the best fiddler that ever was.
Everyone else is dead, so that's cheating. But
well, that ever was in the past or present.
okay.
So you reach this new level of fiddler enlightenment, not by searching for answers in the outside world, but instead making connections with what you have in yourself. So I gave this whole example. I feel like we could go off in a couple different directions with this, but I brought it up for one reason, and that is that there seems to be two sides of a coin here. There seems to be the search for outside information, and then the other side of the coin is knowing how to use it to its fullest potential, and understand the stuff that you already know, right? There seems to be two sides of it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So I think what we want to talk about today is the other side of the coin, the understanding the stuff that you already know. Yeah,
Well,
that's what
I think they're very closely related in a way, and that it's hard to even talk about one without the other. So I think we probably will talk about both. But
right.
I want to focus on that one, as you said. And we'll get into this. But the current environment that we live in and the way we tend to think tends to gravitate towards the other one of adding new things into your head. And that is, to me, a bit of a different process than making connections with what's in your head. And I think
Right.
one displaces the other, is what I'm trying to say. So I think we almost have to talk about what the first looks like to talk about how to get into that state of working on the second. Makes
Right.
sense?
Well, yes. So this is a major problem that I have had for years, where and you can ask people closest to me, that I'm always saying this. I always think that either I just figured it out, like I finally found that final piece of information that I needed in order to complete the puzzle, or like I found the book that I need that's going
Yeah.
to answer all of my questions. And I'm always chasing like that next thing. Like, yeah, so I have a ton of art books, and I always think whenever I order them that that's the one that's going to complete the circle for me,
Well,
and it's going to make everything make sense.
I don't think this is a you problem. It's definitely a me problem too. But if you walk in, let's take diet and nutrition, right? Because that's something that everybody relates to, because we all have to eat, and there's at least some thought given to that. So everyone kind of has to ask themselves this question of, what should I eat? If you go to the diet section at the bookstore, Barnes and Noble or something, and you look at all the books on diet, all of them, maybe with maybe you can find one or two exceptions out of the 1,000 that are there, all of them claim to have a secret that you will uncover if you read them.
Right.
That's the entirety of marketing for diet books, is to pretend you have discovered the secret that the reader doesn't have yet. Promise that to them, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be that seed oils are killing you, or grains are killing you, or GMOs, or meat, or plants, or pick literally any type of food category you can think of. There's a book claiming that's the secret. There's two books claiming it's a secret. One will claim that you should eat it, and one will claim that you shouldn't. It's like every possible permutation.
Right.
I think it's just a very universal human thing to be thinking that way, that there is a secret out there and we need to get it.
Well, that way of marketing is how everything is marketed. I mean, even if you go to YouTube and look at thumbnails, I mean, the thumbnails, the best thumbnails are the ones that suggest there's something that you need to see. That you are not complete as a person until you watch this video and find out what the secret is.
You
I mean,
remember the red arrow phase? I think that kind of
Yes.
went away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's saying, look, there's something here. You have to click in order to find out. Yeah, every bit of marketing is that. And so, yeah, just as a society as a whole, everything operates on this level of, you need this.
So what is this? Well, we'll accept that this is a pretty widespread condition, and I suffer from it as much as anyone, but what does that look like for you? I mean, you said you're always excited about a new book. I mean, is there some sort of cycle here where you get excited, go through it, realize it's not the secret, and then rinse and repeat? Is that kind of the deal?
Yeah. Well, I've started to notice this trend in the last year or so. And that's sort of what I've been going on and on about, is that the secret lies within. I've had the answer the whole time. Not that that's an easy thing. Oh, whatever. We can talk about that later. But the problem shows up in that, yes, I will do exactly that. I will order a new book, be super excited that it's going to show me how to do everything. And then I'll start doing it. And then eventually I'll hit some kind of frustration point with it. And then I'll think, no, I need to learn something else. I need to learn the next new thing because this wasn't right. And it just kind of keeps jumping around.
Yeah.
Indefinitely.
So I don't want to get too hung up on the getting information part, because I think we all intuitively grasp that. Like, you're always reading a new book, you're always watching a new YouTube video, you're listening to a new podcast, or you're just putting random things in your mind by scrolling your phone and browsing the internet, right? Like, there's just always new stuff coming in. We seek that out. But let's focus a little bit on the other side of it, which is okay, if in this particular podcast, the secret is to make connections within your own brain, which there's some irony to claiming that's the secret,
right.
but we're going to focus on that. What would that process look like? Or what, you said this is really resonating with you art wise. What do you mean to kind of seek out what's in your own head? I mean, I have my own feelings on this too, or what this works like for me and where it goes wrong, but
okay, well, one thing I've started to try to do, which seems to help a bit, is that instead of assuming that there is a formula or a right way to do something, I first give myself a chance to try to solve the problem. So, if I want to do a particular style of drawing or something like that, instead of looking up a formula on how to do it exactly, instead of assuming that there is some right way to do it, I will just do it. And just rely on myself to do it the way that I think it should be done. And then afterwards, once, it's just like the first one in the game effect again. It's like, I want to be the first one in the game. I want to be the one that I look to for answers. And then once I've established myself as someone who is capable of making choices, who's capable of doing this, then I can start learning, how other people do it and apply it to my own home base. But if you go into something starting out thinking that you do not have any answers, that the right way exists somewhere else, you just haven't learned it yet, then you don't trust yourself to do anything, and you'll feel kind of crippled. Like you don't trust yourself to make any decisions in that thing.
Yeah. I can think of one example of this recently. I started getting into fermenting vegetables, like making pickles and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Which the naming's a little confusing, because pickling means basically putting stuff in vinegar and letting it soak up the vinegar, essentially. But fermenting is different, where you are creating this specific environment and then letting a bunch of bacteria grow. You're basically rotting things in a controlled way. And so you get actual fermented foods. Sauerkraut is an example of this. Yogurt is fermented. Kimchi, stuff like that. And like actual fermented pickles are kind of their own thing. Anyway, I got interested in this because I had read some random study about how it was really healthy for you. But then I just decided I liked it and just kind of going with it. But I very intentionally decided that I don't want to kill myself and grow some horrible poison thing. So I wanted to make sure I understood the fundamentals well enough. And the fundamentals for this are really simple, which is you need to keep stuff underwater so that no oxygen can get to it. And you need a lot of salt. And there's this pretty broad range of salt. But if you do those two things, then most likely only the good bacteria will grow. And that's it. That's fermenting. Done. And so I've seen so much stuff. There's a fermentation subreddit where people will, somebody posts something and everyone else is like, what's the recipe? What's the recipe? How'd you do this? How'd you do that? And I'm like, I don't care about any of that stuff. There's books on this. There's, the Bible of fermentation that these different different groups have put out. I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want. And it's been fantastic because if I want to know what it's like to ferment beets, I just buy some beets and ferment them, or carrots, or anything I can come up with. And I've experimented with different levels of salt and different things to add to it, and different airlocks and jars and stuff like that. And it just feels like I'm on the fermentation subreddit. I'm like one of the know-it-alls who's like, oh, try this, try that. Because I'm not.
Right.
I just decided very early I don't want to be somebody who relies on other people to tell me what
Right.
works and what doesn't. And it's been extremely freeing, and I have this supreme confidence in my fermentation skills, I guess. But
Yeah, but no, I mean, if you look at the people who are the best at what they do, they experiment with things. They try
Yeah.
stuff out. They don't care if it's the right way or not. They care
Right.
about if it works or not, or if it feels good to them. Like just observe the people who are really good at the things that you like to do, and
Yeah.
watch their attitude towards it, because it's always experimental. It's yeah. And then everyone else treats what they do as like this Bible, and they have to follow it to a T.
Mhm.
But the person at the top is just there experimenting and figuring it out for themselves. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So a slightly different way I wanted to frame this, because I wanted to kind of get into some other areas of thought here. I think it was VST Hero and Fiona were having a little conversation that we spied on because it's in our Discord server. And VST Hero was describing the brain internet, and how he tries to spend time surfing the brain internet, which is, I really like that term for whatever reason.
Well,
But
he was saying in the morning, instead of reading some online articles or look just surfing the web and doing whatever, he would spend time searching his own brain for things. Like his own brain internet. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I like that way of framing this up. Really, I like it a lot, because it makes sense to compare our own brains to like this external thing we invented recently, I guess. But I've been trying to think about my mind that way a little bit, and it kind of does feel like an internet of sorts. I mean, it quite literally is this big network of neurons and whatnot, and one memory is over here and one is over there, and things are conceptualized and whatnot. And so it in some ways feels similar to interacting with the external world, especially the internet, where you can go search for information and find things and find different people and stuff. But it's astounding, if you really reflect on it, how much is already in your head. In fact, the entire universe and everything in it is modeled once per person, and that's in your head. Like, your entire understanding of everything around you is a bunch of neurons in your brain. And the complexity and the number of things that are in there is astounding. And you've brought this up a couple times, I think, how it's surprising. There's something that you think you forgot, but if you really work at it, sometimes you're like, oh, it's in there. It might be hard to get, but
Yep.
it's in there. And I'm not saying that literally everything is recoverable, but there's some imprint of that usually somewhere in your mind. And so if you kind of think about it that way, if you're taking in things externally, you're putting new stuff into your brain. And we've harped on this a lot, but if you read a book and you dump all this stuff in your brain, but you don't remember it, there's a bit of a philosophical argument here, but I take the side of, I think that was kind of pointless. If none of the information sticks with you, you dumped it all in, but then it just disappears and you can't recall it anymore, I don't know that you got a lot out of that. And so it makes you start to think about how accessing this stuff in your own mind, for one, that's how memories are formed, is by you recalling things that are in your brain. Yeah, this is kind of the concept behind spaced repetition, but it's basically just periodically recall stuff that's in your brain because that's how your brain decides what needs to be kept and what doesn't. And then, really, any interesting thoughts or conceptualizations or new ideas, they come from making connections between what's in your brain. And I don't know that we think of it that way, or I don't very often. I've been trying to think about it more that way this week, but I have this tendency to go try and find the answer. Get out on the internet and start searching for stuff and listen to more podcasts and just dump more stuff in there, kind of like panning for gold, trying to find some answer to something. Sometimes the question isn't even very well defined. You're just, I want to feel better. Hopefully, there's somebody out there who can tell me how to feel better, or I want to be
Right.
a better artist, whatever it is. And I think if you start to pay attention to how much of your time you dedicate to that rather than trying to spend time in your own brain making those connections and reinforcing those memories, the it turns out to be kind of appalling how lopsided that is. And I know a lot of us, me included, although this has improved a lot for me, I know a lot of us don't spend any time doing that. I mean, it's very close to none. Where
Right.
if you're idle, you've got a podcast on, yeah, or you've got the TV on, or you're watching The Office for the 10 millionth time, or whatever.
Or yeah, or you throw on music or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Anything. Yeah.
right.
So one way this kind of shows up is at work because I will get a prompt to, they want me to design something. So they come up with a design for this thing. And my first thought is, or what it typically is okay, I need to go search a bunch of stuff like that. Let's say they want me to design an alien spaceship, right? I get back to my desk after the meeting and I think, oh man, well, I don't know what alien spaceships look like. So let's go look at some alien spaceships. And that'll give me an idea of what alien spaceships should look like.
Which is funny on its own because
Yes, it is.
okay,
Yeah, that's stupid, right? Uh, so that's what I would typically do is you just start looking. You start looking for the answers. And I don't mean I'm going to go grab a ship design somewhere and copy paste it. What I mean is that I'm going to go out there and try to find like good ideas and maybe smash them together or something. But I'm looking. I'm searching. What I've started to do is, I get back from the meeting, I sit down, and instead of turning the computer on and looking for ideas or for stuff or for inspiration or whatever, I just think like, okay, well, what is an alien spaceship to me? And then you start going like a little bit deeper in your brain, because the first thought is, well, I don't know. I have no idea. But then you're like, no, shut up and keep thinking. So you start thinking, you're like, whoa, well, actually, I remember in E.T., they have the spaceship and it has like these flashing lights and you see it, through the trees and everything. Maybe I could put it in a scene like that. And then you start thinking, oh, I like Galaxy Quest too. And I remember, that spaceship, well, it looks, kind of like Star Trek. Well, I remember Star Trek too. And oh yeah, there's, Star Wars stuff. Well, that's not really alien anymore. But you start thinking about all of these things that are actually personally connected to you, to personal experiences that you have. And then you start building on them like, okay, well, let's start sketching them out. And then you kind of just go deeper and deeper into your brain. The stuff that is real, like the stuff that means something to you. It starts to come up. The more you practice that, it starts to actually show up. And so what I've started to do is put off the search and start with the thinking. Like just
yeah,
slow down and think through it and see what you come up with, because sometimes it's actually pretty good.
yeah. So the delaying the search thing is something I've also been thinking a lot about and really trying to do. And it sounds like the simplest thing, but sometimes the results are pretty astonishing where you're like, oh,
Right.
no, I actually knew this. This was in my head. And you start to feel that little bit of power of, I think I actually get this. I think I have my own
Mm-hmm.
feelings on this versus just kind of mindlessly searching. I have this theory that you think back to prehistory cavemen type stuff, those people would search a lot. That was part of the experience of being alive, was go search for food, search for shelter and water and things like that. But they would take effort. You would go, you had to go physically move and look and expend energy and everything, right? So it was a task. But we've created something now where you can search without needing to expend any real physical effort. You're just, scrolling the internet and stuff. And then now, of course, we have large language models where you're just talking to something and it's feeding you all this information. And some of it's real, some of it's not, but it's this next evolution of search where information comes at you even easier. And it feels like, to me, there's something perversely attractive about that, where I'll get excited. Just today, there's an example from hours ago. I spent way too much time searching for new headphones. These are Jabra Elites, and I highly recommend not buying them because they're way too expensive and they kind of suck. But the left ear thing, it's not like, there's this weird foam liner and it's gotten all brittle and fallen apart, so it rattles. And it rattles when there's sound on it. It even rattles when I'm talking. It's very annoying. It's annoying me right now, just to share this little private experience that I'm having. And so I'm thinking, well, I got to get new headphones. And I spent way too much time, and I'm not going to tell you how much it was embarrassing, way too much, searching for new headphones. And there's probably 3 that are out there that are even viable for what I want. There's Sennheisers, Sonys, new Jabras. There's not very many, so it doesn't even make sense that I would spend that long. But I'm searching about different codecs and latencies and when is LE audio coming, and Qualcomm has a new certification, all this stupid stuff. And it went way beyond what made any sense. It would not have taken too long to say, okay, what's out there right now? What are the good options? Do any of them fit my requirements? If the answer is no, then I just need to wait. And if it's yes, I need to buy them. That's it, right? It's a simple task. But I'm just one article after another, just searching and searching and searching. Mm-hmm. And I think there is something about that feels really good, at least in the short term, to a human. It's hitting some reward center, making you feel like you're doing something that is valuable, even though it isn't. Like it's not, it doesn't feel like we ought to be able to do that.
When we were kids, I can't remember you doing this, but you probably did. But I remember me and Steven, our other brother, and Dad would collect Hot Wheels cars. Did you ever?
Oh, yeah.
Include? Okay, all right. So we all collected Hot Wheels cars.
That did not pay off, by the way.
That's what I'm getting to. Yeah. Or yeah, we never made any money from them. Anyway, we used to collect Hot Wheels cars, and I remember we would get to a store. We would show up at Walmart. We'd run into the store, find the aisle with the Hot Wheels, run to the rack and just start, going. You just search. You search down the line, and you develop this method of just moving it over just enough to where you can see if it says, Treasure Hunt Series 04 or whatever. And you're just like, you go down all the Hot Wheels cars, and you go through all of them, all the rows, and you just annihilate this thing. And you're like, yes, I got one. Or, I got 3 new Hot Wheels cars that I needed, whatever. And then everyone's so excited. And then you get home and you're like, okay, cool. Now what? I guess I'll just shove these into a Tupperware container and put them under the bed. And that was it. Like, that was all. But the thrill of the hunt, I mean, that was everything. And humans are built for that. They're meant to search out things. Like, it gives them a high because it kept us alive for a very long time.
Yeah.
But so it is built into us. However, constantly buying new Hot Wheels cars doesn't really mean anything. Not to say that you can't want to search for something and then find it and then it actually be useful to you. It's not that that doesn't happen, but that thrill of the hunt is absolutely a thing. I mean,
Right.
I will spend all day feeling really excited that I'm about to find like really cool inspiration or something. I'll just sit there, just like, you with headphones, and you just keep going and going because it feels great. But then after that, you're like, oh, I didn't actually get anything useful. There's nothing here I'm going to continue on with. But that thrill was absolutely real. And it's because it's built into humans.
Yeah, I think you're right. And getting back to the original problem here is that seems to displace the opposite, or
Right.
if you call searching trying to put new information into your head, it's very, very easy to just sink time into that. As I said, I spent way too long searching for new headphones, but I'm trying to find new information. I'm trying to uncover this perfect set that has low latency and good sound quality and a good microphone, and it's not there. It's just, it doesn't exist right now. But I'm so stuck on trying to find that, but I'm not spending any time just, I don't know, thinking about how I use them. And if I really want low latency, I need to just plug in a freaking cable, because that's as low latency as you get. Or I actually have other pairs of headphones that would probably work really well right now. Like, it's kind of a weird example, but
Or you could probably fix it.
yeah, I probably could. It's so easy to sink time into the other thing. So step one, I think, in this problem space is to recognize how easy it is and how tempting it is to just simply search and try to consume new information, because there's something about that is extremely comforting and good feeling. And a friend of mine shared an article with me recently. It was I don't exactly remember the details, but there was some psychology thing where they were testing people. I think this was kind of a famous experiment or something, but somehow they were offering to pay them or something to opt out of these different activities. And so one of them was you get this mild electric shock, and then another was you have to sit in a quiet room for 10 minutes and just be alone with your thoughts. And I can't remember the details, but it ended up that they were more willing to take the electric shocks than they were to sit in a quiet room by themselves.
Okay.
It was more uncomfortable. But I think that's probably, whether that's the perfect scientific study or not, I think it's probably not too far off. Having to stop and really think and really make those connections. Just as an example, with the alien ship thing. Again, setting aside the irony that nobody knows what an alien ship looks like. It's all made up. But that might be a hot take for some people, but that's my my perspective. I mean, which is easier, searching online or trying to think about what you've seen before and make your own connections?
Searching online is way easier, and it's instant payoff. Yeah.
Right, like
and
by a
there's
huge margin.
Yeah, and there's so many cool designs out there. So many people that are way better than me have tons of designs. So it's very tempting to just be, oh, this is what it should look like, something similar to this or whatever. But what about me? This is okay. So this is something I think they get wrong in schools, because the student is always taught, shut up. We don't care about your opinion. Listen to the teacher. Always. Don't question them. Raise your hand if you have something to say. And if you're questioning them too much, then go to the principal's office and shut up. So they teach these kids through their entire lives to not question authority, never have your own opinion, just blindly listen, follow like sheep, shut up, get good grades, and then get out and give us our check. And it totally screws you up to the point where you don't think that you have any real say in anything. You think other people have the answer. They look to their teacher. They don't want to learn an instrument unless they're getting taught by a teacher or whatever. Not that
Yeah.
is such a bad thing, but it's the attitude that you have. And yeah, it's like when we first started this podcast, I felt the need to research every topic that we talked about because I felt like I needed to say the right things. I was like, oh, I gotta know what other people think so I don't say the wrong stuff. Now, I don't care at all. I'll just tell you what I think because I'm just as much a person as any random person online. I don't care. This is what I think. And I think that you kind of have to develop this attitude towards thing. And I do not have a problem.
That can go wrong. By
Yes,
the way.
yes, yes.
That's not always a good thing.
I'm not saying ignore education. I'm not saying don't learn new things. I'm not saying don't get feedback. Don't listen to people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you need to develop an attitude for whatever you do that you are worth something. However dumb you think you are or whatever, your experience in something is worth it. It's worth something. I don't have a problem with this when it comes to music for whatever reason, whether it's when I started or the environment I had or the experience I had with it, whatever. When I write songs, I don't feel like it needs to be anything like that. I don't feel like there's a right way to do it. But when it comes to art, I tend to fall into that trap of, I'm not doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
I need to buy another book and the answer will be in there. And so my attitude seems to shift for different things. So I'm trying to work on that with art stuff. But yeah, I think we get that wrong in school. And I've just seen this a lot in people that they do not value their own opinion or their own thoughts because the answer is always a click away on the computer.
Yeah. What's funny too about that is that I notice that problem tends to be worse for things that I care about more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm less likely to just try stuff and experiment and see what happens and just, I feel like doing something, I'm going to do it. That tends to be on things that I don't put a whole bunch of personal value on, and somewhat irritatingly, I tend to be good at those things, and the stuff that I really care about, I have a hard time with. It's almost like, the teenager trying to talk to girls, and the one he really likes, he's always saying stupid stuff, but his sister's friend is, it's easy to talk to, whatever. Just
Right.
when it doesn't feel like it matters, you're able to think in a better way.
No, that is exactly right. And I've noticed this, well, I've noticed this my whole life, but I think that when you really care about something, you have a tendency, if you look online, do the hard thing, be super tough, and 10x willpower, determination, whatever. Just deal with it, suck it up, and get it done. You have this mentality of, I care so much about this, I don't care what comes up, I'm going to do it anyway. And with that attitude, you begin to ignore not just temptations or distractions, but you also ignore your own thoughts, your own wants, your own opinions, how you actually feel. You bypass all of that stuff and you just move forward with whatever you think is, supposed to be the right thing. So you ignore yourself, your own intuition, and you follow some plan or some, I don't know, structure that you think would be the right way or the cool way or whatever.
I remember this happening when I was teaching guitar. I would have a fair number of students like this, especially older ones. And older people tended to do less well, often enough, although there were plenty of exceptions, so there was nothing guaranteed about that. But
right,
a lot of them would come in and take the guitar out. I'm like, oh, okay, let's, what should I do when I get started? And usually my first goal is just to talk to them a little bit and try to get them a little bit more comfortable. So I'd ask him, oh, when did you get your guitar? And, did you get it for Christmas? Something like that. Like, oh yeah, I've had it for 6 months now. I'm like, cool. What have you tried? Have you messed around? You got any guitar tabs? And a lot of them, again, adults especially, would go, "Oh no, I haven't touched it. I didn't want to do anything until I got lessons. I don't want to do it wrong. I don't want to learn any bad habits. Figured I gotta do this right and go to a teacher." Like, I don't. It's hard to explain to somebody that that's 100% the wrong perspective, and you
Right.
can see the results.
They've already failed. Just
Yeah.
kick them out.
It's like, okay, well, this isn't gonna work. I mean, I've seen some people turn their mentality around, but it's not common. But of course, you fast forward a year, they're on average gonna suck because they're always worried about doing the right thing. And the kid who's just been hammering away on it every second he gets, you know, they're gonna do great. And I do my best to guide them and help them avoid, whatever
Right.
problems. But anyway. So I want to change tack a little bit here because there's something else about this that I think is important. So let's say you are spending time with your own thoughts. You're not on the internet just searching for stuff, following that very easy, rewarding path. You're just really trying to make connections in your own head. Make it more specific. Say you go for a walk. You go walk for 20 minutes. You come back home. You don't have anything distracting you other than just, I don't know, the scenery around you. You're left alone with your own brain. It is not always the case that ends up being great for me. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's
Right.
not. I don't walk away from that thinking, yeah, I spent time on my own brain internet. I've got all these new connections. I've strengthened memories and stuff. Sometimes that doesn't happen at all. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what is it that can go wrong when you are spending time in your own brain? You remove the external problems. What
Right.
works and what doesn't.
Okay, so great point to bring up. Let's go to the alien spaceship. I get this prompt to come up with an alien spaceship, and instead of searching on the computer, I decide to think about it myself. All right, I'm choosing the hard thing, but the right thing. The true thing. So I'm thinking in my brain internet, and I start searching, and I find the ET spaceship. I have this hazy memory of, the UFO coming down and lights around in the woods. All right.
Spoiler.
Okay. But let's say that's about as far as I get. All right. And I feel really great about that. But to go either any further, it's or to search in other areas of my brain, it's hard. It's very hard. There's a lot of mental exhaustion that we overlook, but it's tough to do this. It's tough to sit and think hard, okay? So I stop there. And I also don't search on the computer anymore, or I'm not looking elsewhere. So all I have at this point is some hazy memory of the UFO and ET. Okay, that's not a design. That's nothing. Well,
Yeah.
it's not nothing. It's a starting point. But that's really it. If I stopped there, I would be screwed. If I just turned in like a blurry, hazy image of some UFO, I would be fired. So I can't just stop there. But I also don't just... Okay, the way this would actually work, and I feel like I've done something very similar recently, is I would take that. I would take that as far as I could from my head. Whatever connections I can make from my head, I get that on paper. And then that is my roadmap. And everything else is in support of that roadmap. So then I open up the computer, or I go get a book, or I go wherever I need to go in order to back this up. All right. If I want it, so maybe I do go look up the ET UFO online, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it looks like, whatever. And then I do some studies of it, and then I understand that. But I think, okay, well, that's not quite enough. I want it to look more modern. I want it to look a little bit more scary or something. So then I look up the ship from the bad guy in Galaxy Quest. Ceres, right?
Ceres,
Ceres'
yeah.
ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I look up his ship, and that's a scary one. That's really cool, but that's not quite UFO shape. So maybe I combine the two. And these are both things that I found in my own brain internet. All right. So now I have this sort of ET UFO classic shape, and then I combine it with some of the motifs, some of the design principles from Ceres' ship, and then I mix it with what I think is cool or whatever, and some other references, and voila, now we have a design. Now we have something that's based on personal experiences I have had, not with aliens, but with movies on aliens, and some actual research, right, to back it up, to make it stronger. But I have made, every artist will make this mistake. They will have an idea from their own brain internet, and then when they go out to search for reference to back that up, they will second guess themselves, and they will start getting rid of all the stuff that they came up with first, and then they'll start just gravitating towards all these cool new fancy ideas that they find other people doing, and then they'll just kind of mash those together and use that. And it's always cheap, and it never works, and it sucks because they don't trust themselves. But the important thing here is that attitude in that perspective is, no, it starts with me. Mm-hmm. If you want to design from me, it starts with me and what I can find in my own brain internet before I go find research to back it up. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think one of the problems that I run into, again, in my example, I'm just going for a walk. I just want to get away from electronic stuff and have some time to myself and walk around. And my hope is that that's really healthy for me and it lets me spend time in my own mind. And one of the problems, there's a lot of things that can kind of go wrong there. But as I said, it's pretty easy to go do that and feel like you didn't think about anything, or it was just sort of nonsensical stuff. And I think it's hard to really drill into things unless you have something specific that you're trying to sort out. It's almost as if, to use the actual internet comparison, if you go to Google and you don't have anything to search for, you can't just search for like fun, amusing websites or I'm bored. Right? You get nothing. There's just kind of garbage that comes up. If you want to find anything interesting, you're trying to drill into something specific and interesting and actually make those connections. So in your example, you're thinking about, okay, I got to design an alien spaceship and it has to have some particular aesthetic and I want my own take and feelings on that. I want to make something really cool. And so you're drilling into your mind with this specific thing there. But if you just went, okay, I'm going to think about art for 10 minutes and think of a cool piece of art, it doesn't go anywhere. You wind up just spending all the time in the kind of the same places you always do. It's like opening the front page of Reddit and it's just the same stupid memes over and over, because there's nothing specific. It's just kind of like the easy stuff that you just get stuck in a repetitive thought loop with. I would have this problem when I was playing a lot of piano, trying to get better at improv and things like that. I would sit down, and unless I had some constraint or some specific thing to go after, it's like my fingers just always did the same thing. It's always the same chord. It's always the same stuff with hardly any variations. You always get stuck in this kind of treading water, no man's land. And I think that is an important piece of it, in that if I'm going to go spend time in my own mind, and I actually do want to make some interesting connections, I need to have something I'm after, some specific thing. And I remember when we were doing the 2-minute challenge different. You were doing writing, I was doing piano playing. But the piano playing was so amazing because it really illustrated this thing where I would limit myself to 2 minutes of working on the piano, and I was trying to learn a specific song. And 2 minutes is very little time. And so mostly you're trying to get a bunch of stuff into your head. You're trying to take some notes. In my case, trying to take some notes, figure out where they go, try and memorize that, try and figure out how your hands are going to move from one thing to another. And just by the time you get a couple, chord or two into it, your time's up. So I'd go somewhere else on a walk, and my mind is just cranking away on those things. Yeah, I want to get this stuff pieced together, and so I'm trying to recall what's on the page, or what did my fingers look like, what does it sound like. I'm accessing all these different bits of information that are there. I put them there, but I'm having to try and strengthen all these connections between it, and I learned so much better than if I was spending that same amount of time sitting at the piano. Because what would happen if I was sitting there, let's say practicing for 20 minutes versus 2 minutes and then an 18-minute walk, just to balance it out, is that I'm just constantly shoving that stuff back in my head. I look at the music, figure out where my fingers go, play a couple chords, and then go back and do it again and do it again. I keep just sort of pouring that stuff in my head. I naturally gravitate away from trying to recall that stuff and make real connections, because it's right there, and that tends to be less comfortable. So I just naturally just keep pouring stuff into my brain rather than being out there and forcing myself to think and make those connections. And I can't tell you how much of a difference it was. It was really kind of startling. So that's a major aspect of this I think is important.
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up. It's like it's the mic check. It's okay, can you just test the mic real quick? And you go, check 1 2, mic 1 1 2, and you just go completely blank, even though you've been talking for the entire day. Yes, there's a distinction, or there's sort of a difference between, spinning your wheels on, okay, let's say you're trying to write a song. You sit down and you go, okay, write a cool song. It's going to suck. There's nothing that's going to happen. That is technically spending time in your own brain, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's what we're saying to do. But in this case, it fails because it sucks, because your method or your way about going to do it is wrong. The right way to do it, there's a bunch of different right ways. There's also a bunch of other wrong ways to do it. But a more right way to do it is to just start playing around. And then once you find something you like, you can grow that into a song. Or, that's one thing you could do. And that is still spending time in your own brain. And that works. A bad way to do it would be, you think, okay, I want to write a cool song. Let me open Spotify, find the coolest song I know. I want to listen to that, and then I'm just going to play that. Although I can think of instances where I have listened to a song that I really like, and then, you get inspired and you play your own. So I don't know.
I mean, to me, the key thing there is having something that you're really driving after. Something about just being completely open-ended. Even when you are isolated and you're in your own head, it just, you aren't pushing deep into any of the interesting areas of your mind unless you have something to kind of take you there. Like the alien spaceship thing. If you say, okay, I got to design an alien spaceship, then now you gotta dive into your head and try and figure out, okay, what's there for alien spaceship? That's a pretty random thing. That's not at the forefront of your brain. But if somebody had, again, just said, draw some cool art for me, that doesn't take you anywhere. That's just, okay, what's cool? I don't know. You're not really going anywhere.
So this is why so many personal projects fail, because people fall into this exact trap. There are no parameters. This is why I can make art all day long and have for years at a job, because I'm always given parameters. I'm always given something specific. But when you go to do it yourself, oh my God, it's hard. Mm-hmm. And so I ran into this exact problem when I finally was able to sort of give up freelance and start focusing on personal work. And when I first got there, I do the thing of, okay, just make cool art. And you think, oh God, I have nothing like this. Yeah. I don't know what to do, but I know that I can do it. So I started spending time exploring my brain. I literally did this exact thing where in the morning I would wake up and instead of practicing drawing or whatever, I would just think. I would turn the timer on for about 20 minutes and I would just think. And what I ended up doing, this sort of evolved out of our meditation thing that we did, but I started to use that time to visit random places in the past. And I think I talked about this a little bit, but I would make a list of either rooms or locations or environments or whatever that I wanted to kind of revisit in my mind. It sounds kind of weird, but in the morning I would pick one of those, and for 25 minutes I would just sit there and think about that place. That was my restriction, is only think about that room or that building or whatever. Not I also tried time frames, like only think of 2005, but that was way too hard. It was too vague. So, but choosing a specific room or a specific event or something like that, it's weird. You're able to kind of, I'm not saying it's easy, and some places are easier than others or harder than others, but when you're kind of dedicated to one single room in your past, you can slowly start to walk in and things start coming to you left and right. So through that, I was able to come up with some ideas and story ideas for my personal work, and which continues to give me restrictions. And it's a, artistic quest to, better learn about myself and my life and what I care about or don't care about. You have to kind of study what your tastes are in order to create something. And it's just a lifelong process. But yeah, doing that for a couple months has been absolutely necessary for me to do anything on top of that. Like I had to go back and start trying to like find myself or refine myself or refine the things that I care about or that I want to make art about or whatever.
Yeah, so similar to that, one little experiment I've kind of done is, in the evening, probably around this time-ish, spend some time just isolate myself. For me, it's usually the basement because it's quiet and isolated. But in sort of a form of meditation, just think about today, just today, and reflect on all the stuff that has gone into my head. And you can do this intentionally, or you can just try and meditate and focus on not thinking about anything, and it all just starts to pour in around the edges. But it can be astounding how much stuff I have been dumping on myself the entire day. And it's one day, it doesn't feel like that much. And I worked for most of the day, but then I've listened to some health podcast with, on my run. I was watching Mythbusters while I was lifting. I did all these different, I played Doom for half an hour. It's like so many different things that all pile up. And as soon as you stop, all this stuff just starts showing up of, I did this, I did that. There's all this information. And the interesting thing is that none of it is being processed. It's just getting dumped on my brain. And then as soon as that experience is over, I'm on to something else, and new stuff is getting dumped on my brain. And I think it's part of what results in this thing that I experience a lot, where I'll get 30 minutes, 45 minutes into a film and go, oh, I've seen this before.
Right.
And it's because I watched an entire movie. I sat there and stared at it the whole time. But then as soon as it was over, I'm on to the next thing. And so just none of it sticks. None of that has been recalled. So I don't have any memory around it, or hardly. I haven't taken it, not that movies tend to be super impactful to me as a person, but still, no lessons, no nothing. I haven't integrated that into my mind hardly at all, because I'm just immediately on to the next thing. So just that alone, I think, is really valuable, of actually letting yourself spend time connecting those things and recalling that information.
Going back to your primitive people, let's say, because they did have to go search for things. They had to do stuff during the day. A lot of things. But let's say maybe 20%, 20 to 40% of their day is spent, going out there hunting, some sort of high stress situation, whatever. The rest of the day, let's say 80 to 60% of the rest of their day is doing menial tasks like cleaning their cave or, I don't know, cutting meat or something. I don't know what they did. But with all of these menial tasks that they've done many, many times before, they're able to think. They're able to reflect on their day. They're going through their thoughts. They're not doing anything too crazy. Now, well, okay, even when we were younger, when I was a teenager, I would spend hours almost every night on the roof of our parents' house looking at the stars and thinking. Like, I just, there was so many opportunities in my life back then to just sit and think. Now, as you get older into, when you work full time, you don't have a whole lot of time left over. And there are responsibilities as an adult, whatever, where you begin to have less time. But at the same time, in parallel form, the technological advances have gotten to a point that are so astronomically insane, where at every moment we are doing the searching thing, where you sit down on the couch, you grab the remote, you press on, and then you start searching through Netflix. If you sit down anywhere else, you grab your phone and you start searching through whatever, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, news, whatever. If you go for a run, you throw in the headphones and you listen to a podcast, or you listen to music, or you listen to whatever. If you go for a drive, you throw something on the radio. No matter what you do, you're constantly doing that searching thing. Always. There's never a dull moment in this modern age. It's just constant noise. It's constant searching for something new. And so you never get that reflection time. What I'm saying is that it used to happen naturally all the time. I used to have tons of time to just reflect and think. I don't get that anymore. Both through environment and, well, it's all environment, I guess, but through technological environment and other environment. It's just, I unless I specifically go out to make that time, like 20 minutes in the morning, whippy, like to think, I just don't get it.
Yeah. A couple of things there. So, one of the things that I notice is that even if I do have the time or make the time to get away from that stuff, like I said, I go for a walk, I don't have my phone with me, that kind of stuff. It's pretty common that my mind, it's not there. Right. I'm sitting there just kind of churning through stuff. I'm thinking about some political news event that makes me angry, or something dumb. And my mind just kind of spends all its time cranking away on that. Sometimes in these very repetitive loops that are just feel completely unproductive. It's like my mind just will go to the same thing and think through the same stuff, or imagine some argument or conflict or whatever. Right. And I think there's a few things going on there. One of them is just if you're experiencing that constant attention shift all the time, which is how things are designed, very much playing into that sort of searching thing that we do, where you're moving through one piece of content after another in that constant churn. Your mind sort of attunes to that, where you're used to things shifting constantly. And so when you're removed from that, it's not like it instantly throttles down to, okay, now let's just slow down and start thinking deeply about stuff. It wants to just constantly, it wants to do the same thing. And so it becomes really difficult to keep your mind on something. Going back to the specificity problem. If you want to think about alien ships, you got to think about alien ships. And as you said, it's kind of hard. And you really got to drill in there and try and reconnect with these memories and images and things.
And not just that. You also have to fend off even if you can get, even if you can get rid of all the technology, get rid of all the people talking in the office, get rid of everything, you're just you alone in a room, zero distractions. Even if you've gotten rid of them all, your brain is still used to them showing up.
Yeah.
So your brain snaps out of it every 2 seconds, wanting something or expecting something. And so you have to train yourself to not do that.
Yeah. Train yourself, and I think even more so, just try and get yourself in an environment where your brain is not doing that all the time. We talked a lot about putting the phone away. We did an episode a couple weeks ago on the computer stuff and trying to trim that down and prevent that constant shift of attention. But I think a big piece of being able to think deeply is being able to let your mind sit on one thing for more than 20 seconds.
Right.
Another sort of part of that is I think the fact that when you are putting so much stuff in your head, it's almost like you have this buffer, or it's like a dam with a bunch of water behind it. And so you get a little bit of time to think and start processing, and it's like all this stuff just kind of bursts forward, and you're having to kind of think through and integrate all this stuff that's been put in your head. And until you've worked through a little bit of that, it's hard to settle down and spend time on something. My wife and I have been watching House in the evenings. And that, I mean, it's an old show. I watched it a long time ago, and I kind of just figure, it's a show, it's a drama. I think it's good, but whatever. So we'll put that on at night. We watched an episode, maybe two, something like that. But pretty often, when during the day, say the next day, I have some time to think, I start thinking through a bunch of these House episodes, because they're dramatic, and there's some of it's kind of on the nose or whatever, but still, like, you're watching people in some cases dying or suffering through very real things. Somebody who has cancer, who has terminal cancer, and that's like an intense thing. Or just the pain and struggles of all the characters on the show, things like that, whatever. But that stuff, it's like, it's pretty heavy in its own way. And so it's like, I really do need time to think through that. Even though it's a show, even though it's whatever, I want to, I like that. My brain needs to figure that out. And so I'll go on a walk, and I'm just thinking through all this stuff from House.
You don't have to keep making excuses for House. It's a great show.
It is.
I rewatched, and yeah, I love that show. I rewatched the entire thing all the way to the end for the first time, because before I had seen like all but the last season or something. But I finally finished it a couple years ago.
Yeah, actually, it's the same for me. I don't think I watched. I'm pretty sure I watched. Well, I won't spoil anything in case anyone does decide to get into House, but I'm pretty sure I haven't seen the last season. Yes. Even a long time ago.
Well, I don't want to say anything either, but yeah, you don't have to make excuses for liking House or thinking about it. It's a great show. But also, I mean, that's enjoyable,
Yeah.
I enjoy thinking about shows that I really like or really care about. I mean, that's why we watch shows. Is you want to think about them, and but you're saying it's heavy. Like, even though it's just a TV show. Yeah. And typically you would think, okay, I only watch an episode or two, so it's sort of contained. My experience with it is contained in that hour or two. But that's not the case. It follows you everywhere. Yeah. And so does everything else.
Right. And it's actually astounding how much all of that adds up to. And so when you do take some time to let your mind rest a little bit, I just feel all this stuff starting to come in where I need to spend a few minutes thinking about what pancreatic cancer really means. That could happen to me. It could happen to you. It's a kind of an intense thing that my mind needs some time with. And everything else that is kind of waiting there to be thought about and to be experienced a little bit. It isn't, like you said, it's not just that little chunk of time on its own. it's that needs to get sort of integrated into my brain internet, and I'm not giving it time for that. And so if
Right.
I'm going to use my brain cycles for me thinking about some problem, trying to understand something or make better connections, it's like I feel like I need to get through the buffer a little bit first and let these things process, and then I can sort of settle down. And then on top of that, there's also that problem of attention shifting and everything. And so ideally I dampen that stuff down. I'm not switching attention all the time so that I don't have to have this big transition period, but that's still part of it, where if you go isolate yourself, it takes a little while for your mind to kind of adjust to that. So a big point here is that I think you just need a lot more time. 10 minutes is not it. It
Right.
needs to be regular, and it needs to be a lot more.
Yeah. Otherwise, you run into a lot of
Yeah.
problems. Like you're not able to remember anything.
Yeah.
Uh, well, yeah, all kinds of problems. Um, so we have 6 minutes. Think we can summarize this?
Real quick, I just want to mention one more thing, which is uh, obsession and anxiety,
Okay.
which feel a little different, but in both cases, so anxiety is like a form of worry, sort of a persistent, open-ended worry, or it's sort of like a fear. And the nature of it is that you tend to worry and think about specific not good things constantly. And that is a huge roadblock to being able to think.
Yeah.
It's probably a big part of why so many people have trouble just being alone thinking by themselves, is because when you do, you wind up with a lot of anxiety. Experience this at night trying to go to sleep, especially in the past, where it just people want to have something on, a podcast, a TV show, and just don't let your mind go there. And
Right.
I don't have any simple answers for that. Uh, my experience has been that has improved. It was never extremely severe for me, but it wasn't nothing. But that has improved very gradually over time through putting together lots of positive habits and trying to just become more comfortable and better. And it was just this almost holistic approach of doing a bunch of stuff. And that did correspond pretty closely with improving sleep, which I think is the exact same type of problem, where doing lots of things helps improve that. And anxiety and poor sleep are pretty closely connected. But anyway, that's a major roadblock issue here, is the anxiety, that worry, negative thoughts that you don't want. That's what your mind, that's the problem. That's the nature of it, is that your mind goes to that. And so that's a hard one to solve, but I think that's a big part of being able to get there.
No, I wanted to bring that up too. So good job.
Yeah.
But well, I can't say, not that, yeah, there is no easy answer for that. But for me, I've never found that uh, resorting to searching for something to take your mind off it, or like the example would be you can't fall asleep because you keep having bad thoughts,
Yeah.
and instead of sitting there quietly, you turn on a show so you can just drown out your own thoughts. I have done that. I did that for many, many years, and it never helped. It never made it go away. It never worked. Uh, so for me, the only way that I actually eventually sort of got past that, not that it doesn't happen anymore, but is by removing all of those distractions, removing the ability to go search and
Yeah.
panic find something to drown out your own thoughts. It's just it doesn't really work to drown out
I mean,
your
to me,
own
it's sort
thought.
of a short-term solution, right? Like, you can get
Yeah,
drunk
yeah,
and that makes you happy for a while, but you're not going to feel good later. I mean, it's a
right.
complicated thing, and I don't want to
Yeah, yeah,
oversimplify it,
yeah.
but uh, yeah. And okay, so that's kind of cut into our summary time, but I wanted to bring that up real quick. So to kind of try and piece this together in 1 minute, there's a major difference between putting new stuff in your brain and spending time with the stuff that's already in your brain. And the stuff that's already in your brain is astoundingly huge. There's so much stuff already in there, you really don't realize it unless you really start thinking about it. So spend more time in your brain, and it helps a lot to have specific direction, not just be alone with your thoughts. So that can be nice, but to have something you're really trying to work through can kind of take you deeper into those connections in your mind. I liked your exercise, try and recall a specific place you used to be or an event that happened, strengthen memories from that are in there that are fading away, and try and make new connections. And I think that the world is headed in a direction, especially with AI, where just getting new information is so cheap and so easy that it's almost worthless. And the only valuable thing you can really do is think deeply. And that's probably it. They're all we have time for. Anything to add?
Yeah, just that it's very complicated, and that we tried to separate it into new stuff and then old stuff, but it's so much more complicated than that. It's not like, yeah, but no, I think you summarized it well. My computer's turning off.
All right, goodbye everybody. We'll see you next week.